Right guys, welcome back to the channel. In this video I'm just going to show you how to swap out your cassette on your bike for a new one. Whether you're just putting a new one on because your old one is worn and you want to know how to change it, or you're thinking of changing to a different gear ratio on the back and you're wondering just how to change your cassette. I'm going to show you how to do it. This is an 11 speed Shimano rear cassette we're going to be changing, so I'll go ahead and I'll run through the steps. Right, so obviously we need to remove the back wheel from the bike first of all. So you can either drop your wheel out, obviously remove your chain first, or leave your chain on there, whichever, but go ahead first, drop your wheel out the bike. So you just want to obviously slacken off your rear brake so you can drop the wheel out easier, obviously, so tyre clearance through the pads. If you've got a disc wheel, obviously you don't need to worry about that. You'll just slot it out of the disc. So you need to go ahead and obviously slacken off your quick release skewer, or take your through axle out if you're running a disc bike. Now I say you can remove the chain or leave the chain on there. If you remove the chain, you can put a new chain on while you're going to do a new cassette. Now you may have to put a new chain on anyway if you're going from, say, a 1125 and you're going to be putting, and you want lower gearing for some bigger hills, you're going to put 1132 on, then you'll need to resize your chain anyway. So now's a good time to obviously put a new chain on. So we go ahead, we get the back wheel dropped out of the bike. Right, so we have the wheel removed from the bike. Now what you want to do is just remove your, if you've got a quick release wheel, obviously just remove your quick release skewer out of the from the hub, and just pop that to one side. So once you've done that, you go ahead, what you need is a lock ring tool for Shimano, SRAM, like so. Now these are better if you've got the prong in the middle, because it helps just to locate, and it goes in, just gives it, the tool, a better chance of staying in there, so to speak, with that in the middle. So they're better design. You can get them without that, but always recommend it's better to have one with that in the middle. So you go ahead, just locate that in there like so. That's all. That's just basically the lock ring on the end. So you go ahead and put that in. Now you've got to obviously have a way of stopping, because we want to undo it. And obviously, as you can see, anti-clockwise, the free hub is not engaged, so it's just, it would be no good for undoing this. So you need a way of securing it. So you either need a chain whip, which is the handle with the length of chain on it, what you'll put round the cassette to hold it in position, or alternatively you can just get a tool like so. It's like a big pair of grips really. So you can just open it up like so, and then you can just put it round the cassette like so. And obviously then you're holding on to the handle, which is better than a chain whip, and easier to use, and they're just better than chain whips. Some of them chain whips, this can be that tight that you're holding on to a chain whip, and you can literally watch the handle of the chain whip bend and flex, and just almost, you can just bend, literally bend. I've done it many a time. These some of these done up so tight. Now obviously you can use an open-ended spanner or ring spanner on that, but a lot of times that won't be good enough to undo it. So you want a decent ratchet with the appropriate size socket to fit over the tool, lock ring tool. Now sometimes even that won't be big enough. You'll need a breaker bar, so another foot or more longer than that to undo it with, if you know it hasn't been off before, say, and it hasn't been greased. There's no grease on it. It could be done up so tight that you'll be amazed how tight they can be. I've actually had a bar about 1.5 foot longer than that connected to a length of scaffold tube, just to undo a lock ring on a cassette in the past. That's how tight they can actually be. So be aware of that. just in case you need something substantial to undo it with. But if it's been done up properly, then you should just be able to get the tool like so, holding on to the handle, put the ratchet and socket over your tool like so, obviously anti-clockwise on the ratchet. You should just be able to undo it, just push down. It's going to be tight, but like so, and that's undone. So once you've undone it like that, then you can lose this and you can just undo it by hand. Obviously you can remove the cassette tool. Obviously you can tilt the wheel back a bit and then just undo the lock ring. Now, so you've undone the lock ring, then the lock ring itself will come off like so, and that's just the lock ring. They're not held on by a lot of threads. So when you've got that off, you can remove the 11 tooth itself. You can get rid of that one. Now, if you're getting rid of the cassette completely, you're not using it for anything else, or putting it onto another bike or anything like that, you could just take that off. You could just get hold of it, slide it off, and it'll just come apart in component pieces. But if you want to keep it as it is there, then the best thing to do is, if you obviously, you know, you might not have one, but if you have, when you get the new cassette, it comes with a plastic insert like so, and obviously to keep it one piece, if you need to, then you can just line up the solid line there with the smallest on the free hub body itself, the smallest notch you're looking for on there, as you can see. Then you just line them up, put them at the top somewhere so you know where they are, and you can just slide that off so it ends up onto the holder like so, so it doesn't all fall apart, which is just handy to have. So once you remove that, then we're ready for the next step. Right, so once you remove the cassette, you can just go ahead and check your free hub body. Obviously if it needs cleaning, then go ahead and clean it up. Then just check for any damage. Obviously some of the free hub bodies, where they're softer, they're aluminium, they can get marked with some burrs on the raised parts. So if you see any of that and they're quite pronounced, then you go ahead and get a small file and just file down those burrs, just to help the new cassette go back on, and just to get rid of the burrs. Obviously if you're changing it like for like, obviously it's 11-speed Shimano, you're putting back on 11-speed Shimano, so there's nothing to do. You don't need any spacers or anything like that. If you're swapping from a 10-speed to 11-speed, an upgrade, then obviously there would have been a little spacer on here on the free hub body after you move the cassette. Then you'll need to get rid of that spacer and then put your 11-speed cassette back on. So once that's cleaned up, you go ahead and just put some grease, just get some grease on your finger and put some grease round over here, just a thin coating of grease, just to help stop the cassette getting stuck on there at a later date, make it easier to remove next time you need to take it off. So put some grease around the actual free hub body. Right, so here we have the cassette, obviously in the box. So what you want to do is just go ahead, obviously, and remove the actual cassette out of the box. And go ahead and get that out. So there's the cassette. Doesn't matter what you're putting on, if it's a 28, 1128, 1130, 1132, whichever, 1125. Just go ahead and get that out the packaging. And you've got something like this. Now obviously we want to fit it onto the free hub, so you can see the plastic piece inside here, what it comes with, obviously, so it keeps the cassette in one piece, like so. So what you want to do is, you can slide this on, but obviously it only slides on so far. You need to remove, if you just pop the lock ring out there, you can remove the 11 tooth off of there. So now you can put it on like so. Now what you're looking for on this is to slide this on. Obviously you just remove the lock-in tab here, just flick that out of the way, and then what you want to do is look around the outside here, all these notches are, and then find the one that's just filled in as such. You can see that one there, just a solid piece, not these. It's just one solid one, obviously, and what that does is that will correspond, and if you put the cassette down, put it like that, otherwise it will fall off if you haven't got the if this isn't on there. So that piece corresponds with on your free hub on the bike, on the wheel. You're looking, it corresponds, obviously you can see there the smallest one there. So all you do is line those two up and slide it on, which I'll show you now. So like I said, you want to line it up with the smallest notch there on the freer body. So if you put that at the top, you know where it is. Then just get your cassette, like I showed, with the spacer in it, and then just find, like I said earlier on, the notch there. Then just sit them together, like so. They're lined up. Once they're lined up, you should be able to push them on like so. Then when it's on there, obviously don't tip the wheel over because they'll fall off. So tip the wheel back a bit, and you can get rid of the spacer, I mean the plastic sleeve. And then you're left with that. So then what you want to do is you go obviously get your 11 that you need to put on. Look on the back of that and just look for the smallest notch at the top there. So the smallest little notch will obviously correspond with the smallest one on there. So you can get that in place, and then obviously what you'll need to do is get your lock ring and make sure, just put a thin smear of grease on the threads of the lock ring before you go ahead and thread it in. So obviously you can just lie the wheel back down to do that, like so. And then you got your lock ring tool, so you can mount that into your lock ring tool, and then put a smear, just like I said, put a smear of grease. I'll just put a smear of grease on the thread, get some grease on your finger, just put a little bit around the thread there. This is just to help it, especially if you're riding in the wet or anything, stop it seizing on there at all. Just helps, it all helps getting it off at a later date. So when you've done that, then you go ahead and obviously put it back on like so, and make sure that when you're doing these up, now some of the lock rings can be metal, some of them can be plastic, but the best thing to do is make sure that you're not cross threading it when you're doing this up. Make sure it's going in nice and smooth, then just nip it up tight by hand. And to make sure you've got it on there properly, centrally, is just look at the cassette, or look down the cassette, and just make sure that the gap's right. And when you spin it, when you spin the cassette like so, it's not wobbling side to side. So make sure you've got the last 11 tooth on there and the lock ring on there straight. Otherwise sometimes you could get it on there crooked and you wouldn't know, and you haven't noticed it. So it's worth just checking that. Just spin it, make sure it is straight before you go ahead and tighten it right up. And then what'll happen is you'll strip the thread in the freer body, and then you'll ruin that. So obviously on the lock ring they normally got the torque on there, you see there 40 Newton meters. So go ahead and we'll do that up. Right, so when you're ready, as I said, this is 40 Newton meters. So if you're wondering what that is, obviously if you don't have to hand a torque wrench big enough to go to 40 Newton meters, like most of the small ones will go up to sort of 20-25 Newton meters, that's obviously not enough. And you're not likely to have a torque wrench as big as that to hand, say, for for instance, or you're not going to buy a torque wrench that big just to do a cassette lock ring with, obviously just get this up. This is a 1/2 inch ratchet, so obviously put your tool in and you put your socket over the tool. Obviously you want to tighten it up, so you just go until it stops moving. Then it's just a bit notchy like they always are. Go a bit more, and obviously I'm not holding the end of the ratchet, I'm holding it up the head by the head here. So just go with that, and that's as much I'm doing. I'm not holding it on the end and beasting it right up, because all you'll do is the plastic, if it's a plastic lock ring, say for instance, all you'll do is strip the threads out of that, and it'll ruin the threads in the freehub body, and it'll strip that plastic, or because it's only plastic, it will strip that before it strips the freehub. So, and if it's a metal one, it will just strip the threads out of the freehub before it strips the lock ring. So either way you'll ruin it, and then next time you come and undo it, you probably won't even be able to undo it without a big breaker bar. So just go careful when you're doing it up, and don't hold the end. There's so much leverage on the end of that ratchet, you don't need that much. You can hold it at the head there and do it up, like I said, and just put it in like that and do it like so. I can't do any more just by holding it at the head. I'm not holding the handle at all, and that'll be plenty. So that's how you do it if you haven't got a massive torque wrench like that to do it with, and you know you can set it at 40 Newton meters. Right, so that's the wheel refitted back into the bike. Obviously the reverse of removing it. Just make sure that your caliper's adjusted correctly, and it's touching when you brake evenly on the wheel, and that hasn't moved position at all. And also run through your gears now you fitted the new cassette, just to make sure that nothing needs adjusting before you go out on the road and find that you should have made an adjustment. So just check that, just to make sure that nothing needs adjusting while you've got it on the stand or whatever, or you're not riding it. It's worth checking. Right guys, there's steps complete for you. Hope you found the video helpful. So if you did, give the video a thumbs up. Remember to subscribe to the channel for more cycle related content. Until the next one, ride safe and I'll see you then.